Hey guys, so today we're going to do something a little bit different. We're going to do a Queen Albums bracket. Now if you don't know what a bracket is, it's basically like a tournament, championship or playoff layout in sports, where two teams go head to head and the winner goes through to the next round, and then slowly but surely you work your way down until you've got your number one. So I've made up this Queen Albums bracket and we're going to go through it and see which Queen album works out as number one. So we start in the top left hand corner with A Night at the Opera versus Queen. The first Queen album is not a bad album. There's a number of good songs on it, Keep Yourself Alive and Liar being the sort of top two of those, but you can't beat A Night at the Opera. It has those classic singles on it, Bohemian Rhapsody, You're My Best Friend, and some other great album tracks. So A Night at the Opera for me probably goes through in this one. The Game versus The Miracle. Now The Game is one of my personal favourite albums of Queen. I really like it. The Miracle again isn't a bad album. It's probably not as strong as The Game, but it's got some good tracks on it. I Want It All, Breakthrough, The Miracle, which all featured on Greatest Hits 2. And of course Scandal is one of my favourite Queen songs. Other great songs on there include Hang On In There, Was It All Worth It? But for me The Game is definitely the stronger of the two. A Day at the Races versus Sheer Heart Attack. Now, Sheer Heart Attack is an album that I probably don't listen to as much as the others. I've got to go and give it more of a listen, definitely. Again, got some good tracks on there. You've got Killer Queen being the lead single, their first real big hit single. Now I'm Here is obviously a big part of the Queen live show throughout their 20-year touring history. Other great songs include stuff like Flick of the Wrist, Brighton Rock. I think A Day at the Races is probably the stronger album. You've got songs like Somebody to Love and Tie Your Mother Down being on there. Some other great album tracks scattered throughout, so probably Day at the Races over Sheer Heart Attack for me. The last one of this first round, at least on the left side, is Jazz versus The Works. These two albums have some strong singles with Fat Bottom Girls, Bicycle Race, Don't Stop Me Now, while The Works of course has Radio Gaga and I Want to Break Free. Hammer to Fall is on there as well. The Works has other great tracks on it like Tear It Up, which was a great number they used to open their shows on the Works tour. You've got obviously Is This the World We Created, a nice little acoustic number. And of course Machines Back to Humans is nice, kind of something different. This is definitely one of the tougher ones because probably for me, as a whole album, I probably prefer Jazz, but The Works is strong as well. In this case, I'll probably favour with Jazz. Into the second round of the left side now, and we've got A Night at the Opera versus The Game. Definitely a tough choice for me here because these are two of my favourite Queen albums, possibly even two of the top three. The Game obviously has strong hit singles, Crazy Little Thing Called Love, Another One Bites the Dust being two of the biggest worldwide hits the Queen had. Obviously songs like Play the Game, Save Me also made Queen's greatest hits album. And then you've got other great album tracks like Need Your Loving Tonight, Rocket Prime Jive, Coming Soon, Sail Away Sweet Sister, so a really strong album in The Game. But A Night at the Opera obviously has Bohemian Rhapsody, You're My Best Friend, another two big hit singles. And I reckon its album tracks 39, Death on Two Legs, Love of My Life, these kind of songs, maybe just give it the edge this time for me over The Game. So A Night at the Opera in this one. A Day at the Races versus Jazz. This one isn't too difficult for me, I don't think. Jazz is not a bad album, but I think Day at the Races is probably the stronger of the two. Jazz obviously has some tracks on it that were great in the live shows, with Fat Bottom Girls being one of them. Let Me Entertain You was something they used on the stage for a number of years, and Mustafa was definitely a fan favourite at the live shows. Day at the Races probably for me is just the stronger of the two albums. Heading into round 3 for this left side, and we've got A Night at the Opera versus A Day at the Races. Two albums very similar, designed to be, I think. A lot of people would probably just immediately say A Night at the Opera wins this one, but I don't know. I think A Day at the Races has spent a lot of time in the shadow of A Night at the Opera. You've got a number of great hit singles on A Day at the Races, like Somebody to Love, Tie Your Mother Down has always been a fan favourite and a great song in the live shows. Good Old Fashioned Loverboy is another song that made the Greatest Hits album. And then you've got some great album tracks on there like Millionaire Waltz, White Man, Tio Toriate. So it's definitely one of Queen's stronger albums. A Night at the Opera obviously has those hit singles we've mentioned in the past and a number of great album tracks as well, so it's pretty close head to head. A Night at the Opera probably just wins out because those album tracks, the 39, Death on Two Legs, Prophet Song, Love of My Life, they really are a strong kind of support to the hit singles of Bohemian Rhapsody and You're My Best Friend, so just that one winning out there, Night at the Opera over Day at the Races. I will say though that songs like Seaside Rendezvous, Lazing on a Sunday Afternoon, Good Company, compared to A Day at the Races which has songs like Long Away, You and I, Drowse, I probably prefer the Day at the Races in terms of those kind of third tier tracks or whatever you want to call them, but overall A Night at the Opera. So now we switch over to the right side. Top right hand corner we've got Hot Space versus News of the World. Not much of a challenge here. Hot Space is definitely recognised as one of, if not the weakest Queen albums. Personally I like Hot Space a lot more than most people tend to, but compared to News of the World with We Will Rock You, We Are the Champions, Hot Space doesn't really quite stand up as well. Next one down is Queen 2 versus A Kind of Magic. A Kind of Magic is an interesting album because it obviously is part Highlander soundtrack, part Queen album, and sometimes you feel like maybe it doesn't really know what it's trying to be. In saying that, it's got some strong hit singles like One Vision, A Kind of Magic, Who Wants to Live Forever, all made it onto the Greatest Hits 2 album. But I feel compared to Queen 2, which is definitely one of Queen's best albums, A Kind of Magic probably doesn't stand up. Flash Gordon up against Made in Heaven. Flash Gordon is obviously a tough one to rank against the other albums because it is primarily a soundtrack album and it's mostly made up of instrumental tracks. So compared to the others, it's kind of got an unfair disadvantage probably. There are some great tracks on the Flash Gordon soundtrack, both instrumental and non-instrumental, but Flash's theme, The Hero, two of the great standout tracks on that album. In comparison, I think Made in Heaven is probably the stronger of the two albums. You can't beat out all four guys together writing, songs for your typical album format. The instrumental side of Flash Gordon isn't bad music, but I think compared to an actual album worth of 10 normal tracks, the Flash Gordon soundtrack probably loses out to Made in Heaven in this case. Innuendo up against the Cosmos Rocks. A lot of people say Cosmos Rocks is technically a Queen Plus album, not a Queen album, but I needed an extra album to fill out this bracket, so the Cosmos Rocks seemed better suited to this than, say, a compilation album or a live album. Innuendo is definitely the stronger of the two albums. In saying that, Cosmos Rocks is, I don't think, as bad as some people make it out to be. There's some strong tracks, including the title track. Celebrity is another great song. Say It's Not True is definitely the best song of the album. And for me personally, We Believe is a song that I've started to listen to again recently and come to really like, so definitely some strong tracks on Cosmos Rocks, but Innuendo is much stronger, I think. Round 2 of the right side, and we've got News of the World going up against Queen 2. Now this is a tough one, two strong albums. In terms of hit singles, News of the World wins out because of We Will Rock You, We Are the Champions, but I think Queen 2 is probably the stronger overall album in my opinion. News of the World has great tracks like It's Late with a great, rock sound to it. Get Down Make Love was a huge part of the Queen live show in the late 70s, early 80s. And Spread Your Wings is a great John Deacon track, definitely an underrated Queen song. But Queen 2 for me is probably the stronger overall album. Made in Heaven up against Innuendo, the two last Queen albums really. I think Innuendo wins this one somewhat easily. Made in Heaven has some great tracks on it, but it's also kind of made up of reworked versions of some of Freddie's solo songs. It's not your typical album. For what it is, it's an amazing achievement that they managed to make such a strong album when they were just working with what scraps they had left from recording sessions while Freddie was ill in the later stages of his life. But Innuendo, for me, probably the stronger of those two albums. Round 3 of the right side, and we've got Queen 2 going up against Innuendo. I think Innuendo is an interesting album because you do have a lot of songs like the title track, Innuendo, and Show Must Go On, which are kind of a throwback, particularly Innuendo is a throwback to some of those kind of long epics that Queen wrote, particularly on their first 4 albums. Again, in terms of hit singles or songs that were on the Greatest Hits album, Innuendo has stuff like the title track, Show Must Go On, These Are the Days of Our Lives, I'm Going Slightly Mad, and Queen 2 only has 7 Seas of Ride. But I think as a whole album, and I keep saying this, Queen 2 is probably just a better all-round album. I think White Queen, March of the Black Queen, strong tracks, Father to Son, all these kind of different songs. It makes for a whole strong album overall. So Queen 2 versus Innuendo probably goes to Queen 2 in this case for me. So that brings us to our final round, our championship fight, if you want to call it that. A Night at the Opera versus Queen 2. Two of the strongest albums that Queen ever made, that's for sure. A lot of people, if they got here, would probably choose Queen 2 because I know it's a definite fan favourite. That's not to say A Night at the Opera isn't. Obviously, we know that as one of the greatest albums of all time. For me, personally, I think I'm probably going to side with A Night at the Opera. I do like Queen 2 very much, but I think there's more songs on A Night at the Opera, even if you take away the hit singles. A Night at the Opera for me has more songs that I like to listen to and that I prefer over Queen 2. Queen 2 probably wins the most underrated album of all time, definitely in the Queen catalogue, but I think A Night at the Opera just beats out Queen 2 for the best Queen album out of all of them for me. So let us know down in the comments what you thought of this bracket. How do you think each of these albums stacks up against each other? Give the bracket a go yourself and let me know your results. What kind of results did you get in this one? Also, while you're down there, give us some suggestions of other brackets you'd like to see us put together and have a go at. It can be Queen related, it can be music related, it can be anything else, movies, TV shows, video games. We do it all here, so give us some suggestions and we might give it a go. As always, remember to like and share the video, subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss anything from this channel.